Two questions, one to Jeff Halper. You said you think it's difficult to live in a binational country, but you are living in a multinational country. Why is it so difficult, or what is difficult about it? And I have another question to Richard Falk about you were talking about the dramatic move in the international civil society towards a new war courage and so on, or the support for the legitimacy war. And you were also addressing the analysis of Israel as an apartheid regime and so on. This point is becoming more and more important. I think it's very helpful. But my question is, there is a big difference between South Africa, for instance, and Israel. That is the role of the PA, which is not in support of genuine interests of the Palestinian people. Do you see in your experience some hope also to get the Palestinian government or leadership to defend the genuine interests of the Palestinian people?
I mean, it's true, just if I can steal a second from Richard's question. The second question, what is true and what makes it very difficult for us, look, I'm not a Palestinian. I can't represent the Palestinian people. And so I can support their struggle. I can raise issues. I can analyze. I can say what, as an Israeli, I think, but I can't, I have to stop short. So if you say to me, what's the solution? That's not my prerogative. It's a Palestinian's right to say what the solution is. And the problem is that, unlike the struggle in South Africa, you have different Palestinian voices. And that's one thing that makes it very difficult. In South Africa, the ANC had one program that everybody agreed to. It was one person, one vote. It was actually one man, one vote, but that was then. Today it would be one person, one vote. And that was what everybody mobilized around. Here we're lacking that. There isn't an end game. One state, and then it can be a democratic state, it could be a binational state, two states, a bigger two states, a littler two states, the Hamas position, one state without Jews. I mean, there's a lot of variations, and it makes it hard. What we're suggesting is, I mean, I like the one state idea. I think you're right. We live de facto in one state. I mean, there's only one government in this whole country. That's the Israeli. There isn't a Palestinian government. There's only one army. There's only one electrical system. There's only one water system. It's all Israeli. So, de facto, we live in that situation. But a binational state is problematic. I mean, it's nice to say one state, and it's just. And I think it's a challenge. But, you know, one state, the problem is you have here two nations, you see, that are sharing the same country. They're not ethnic groups. And the definition of a nation is a people who claim self-determination. And so the problem with a binational state is who does the state belong to? And you can see in Sri Lanka, you can see in Cyprus even, you can see in the former Yugoslavia, I mean even Belgium, with the two languages, is falling apart. Canada. You can see that it's not easy for nations or national groups or religious groups or language groups to live in the same state. So I think it's a challenge for us, but it's still something that I think is a ways down the line. So what we're suggesting is, if we don't have a solution today, we should identify, and I don't think maybe these are all the elements, but I think these are the basic elements of any solution. 1 state, 2 states, 10 states, you know, and I think that any solution that's going to work and be just has to include all of these. And that is some national expression for both peoples, whether it's 2 states or in a binational state. There has to be economic viability, which means there can't be a Bantu state, like South Africa. You can't have a Palestinian state on 15% of the country that has no economy and offers no future for its young people. You know, 60% of the Palestinians are under the age of 18. So the idea of viability is very important. I think, as Richard emphasizes, there has to be conformity with human rights, international law, and UN resolutions. Otherwise, it's power negotiations, like in Oslo, and Israel wins, because Israel's a strong party. Human rights and international law levels, what we say in English, levels the playing field so that the weaker party has some leverage. We have to really deal with the refugee issue that Israel refuses to do, and that also means acknowledgement. There's a symbolic part. I was just in Korea and talking about this. The first thing that jumps up in Korea, you're there for 5 minutes, is the Japanese occupation. And it's not, and the fact that the Japanese until today have not apologized or acknowledged to the Koreans or the Chinese what they did. And it's still an open wound. I mean, it's out, you can't have a political discussion without that coming up. That symbolic part is very important. I think there has to be a regional approach and, of course, security. So what I'm saying is, at least, we can have a vision together and an agenda based on these elements. And then, so that everything, every plan we hear, now there's a new Obama plan, or Tony Blair comes up with something new, or you know, Abdullah of Jordan, anything we hear, I think we should filter through, is it meeting these elements? And if it isn't, I think it's not going to work. So that's sort of an intermediary thing we can do until we actually come to a solution.
Thank you. For 1 second, I want to ask whether there is a very brief Palestinian reaction to what he just said, particularly about these preconditions that should prevail.
Jerusalem, for example, because they are throwing the people out of Jerusalem. I met last week a guy who's living now in Freiburg, and he told me in 1990 he got a letter from the Israeli government telling him that you are living for 20 years outside Jerusalem, and you are not allowed to come back. And he went to the I don't know, the municipality here or whatever. Okay, I know this brief. The lady there, she told him, okay, I know this brief. I know this letter. I know this letter throwing to police, and this is well known. Also in Germany, there is a deal between Germany and Israel.
That's maybe going into too much detail.
Yeah.
Whether this makes sense to you from a Palestinian perspective, what he said.
The water, yeah, the water, I don't know, water, Jerusalem.